The massive research station floated silently in the darkness of space, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside, hundreds of the galaxy's brightest minds worked around the clock, trying to solve problems that would challenge even the most advanced civilizations. But today something had them all stumped. Dr. Zara Vexhai stood before the enormous screen that dominated the main laboratory. Her crystalline body caught the light from the display, casting rainbow patterns across the walls. As the lead scientist for the Galactic Research Consortium, she had seen many strange things in her long career, but nothing quite like this. "Show me the signal again," she said to the room's artificial intelligence. The screen filled with a pattern of lines, some short, some long. They repeated over and over in the same order, never changing, never stopping. The pattern had been broadcasting from the Veil Nebula for 3 months now, and no one could figure out what it meant. Nexus 7 has analyzed this signal 2.7 million times, reported Dr. Thexnell, a blue-skinned mathematician from the Andromeda sector. His forearms moved quickly as he pulled up data on his tablet. "We have used every known method of pattern analysis. We have compared it to 50,000 different languages. We have tested it against every form of mathematics we know." Zara's translator device buzzed as it converted his words into her native language. The consortium brought together beings from dozens of different worlds, each with their own way of speaking and thinking. Usually this diversity helped them solve problems faster. Today it seemed useless. "What about quantum encryption?" asked Dr. Melwis, her tentacles tapping nervously on the table. "The pattern could be hiding a message using quantum states." "Already tested," Thexnall replied. Nexus 7 ran quantum analysis for 6 weeks, nothing. The room fell quiet except for the soft humming of machines. Through the large windows they could see other research ships floating nearby, all working on the same puzzle. The signal had caught the attention of every major civilization in the galaxy. Zara moved closer to the screen, studying the pattern once more. Short, short, short. Long, 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 short, short, short. Then it repeated. The timing was perfect, mechanical. Whatever was sending the signal, it was definitely made by someone intelligent. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Asked Dr. Yulseth, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it himself. Impossible, Zara replied. The pattern is too regular, too structured. This is definitely artificial. Someone or something is trying to communicate with us. She had spent her entire life studying alien languages and communication methods. Her people, the Kethvari, were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to understand different forms of expression. Their crystalline minds could process information in ways that most other species found impossible. If she couldn't understand the signal, it might mean they had found something truly alien. Perhaps we are thinking about this wrong, suggested Dr. Rindal, a small furry creature from the Outer Rim territories. What if this is not a language at all? What if it is art or music or some form of emotional expression? Nexus 7's voice filled the room, speaking in the calm, measured tone that all AI systems used. I have analyzed the signal for artistic and emotional content. No meaningful patterns detected. I have also tested it as a mathematical sequence, a star map, a chemical formula, and 47,000 other possibilities. The signal remains incomprehensible. Zara felt a chill run through her crystalline body. Nexus 7 was the most powerful computer ever built. It could simulate the birth and death of entire solar systems. It could predict the movement of galaxies millions of years into the future. If Nexus 7 couldn't understand this simple pattern, what did that say about the intelligence that created it? How long until the next broadcast? She asked. 4 hours and 37 minutes, Nexus 7 replied. The signal repeats every 4.7 hours with perfect accuracy. It has never varied, not even by a nanosecond. Dr. Kexivor, a tall, thin being with 6 eyes, raised one of his many hands. Could this be some kind of test? Perhaps an advanced civilization is trying to see if we are intelligent enough to understand their message. If that's true, then we're failing badly, muttered Dr. Thexnall. Zara walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the Veil Nebula, someone was calling out to them. The nebula was a dangerous place, full of radiation and unstable matter. Most civilizations avoided it completely. But someone was there, broadcasting this message day after day, never stopping, never giving up. We need fresh minds on this, she announced to the room. Contact every research facility in the galaxy. I want linguists, mathematicians, artists, philosophers, anyone who might see something we're missing. What about the humans? Asked Dr. Melwis. They just joined the consortium last year. Perhaps they have a different perspective. Several scientists in the room made sounds that their translator devices interpreted as laughter. Humans were still considered primitive by galactic standards. They had only recently figured out faster-than-light travel, and their technology was centuries behind most other civilizations. The humans are still cataloging artifacts in the lower levels, Dr. Kexvor said dismissively. They have been helpful with manual labor, but this problem requires advanced thinking. Still, Zara said thoughtfully, Dr. Melwis has a point. We have tried every advanced method we know. Perhaps a more basic approach might reveal something new. She turned back to the screen where the pattern continued its endless repetition. Short, short, short. Long, 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 short, short, short. It seemed so simple, yet it had defeated the greatest minds in the galaxy. Nexus 7. Prepare a complete data package of the signal, she ordered. Include all our analysis and theories. We're going to share this with every researcher on the station, regardless of their species or background. Including the humans? The AI asked. Zara paused for a moment. The humans had been eager to help since joining the consortium, but most civilizations viewed them as enthusiastic beginners rather than serious researchers. Still, they had managed to build a spacefaring civilization without outside help. That had to count for something. Yes, she said finally. Including the humans. If we can't solve this with our advanced methods, maybe we need to try something different. As the other scientists began filing out of the room, Zara remained at the window. The signal continued broadcasting from the Veil Nebula, carrying its mysterious message across the void. Someone out there was trying to communicate, and they weren't giving up. She just hoped that somewhere among all the researchers on the station, someone would finally understand what they were trying to say. The pattern seemed so simple, yet it held secrets that had stumped the most powerful computer in the galaxy little. Did she know that the answer was about to come from the most unexpected source of all, a young human who would see something that their advanced civilization had completely overlooked? Dr. Sarah Chen pushed her cart down the long corridor of the research station, her footsteps echoing softly in the vast space. The cart was filled with ancient artifacts from a dozen different worlds, pottery fragments, metal tools, and stone carvings that told stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen millions of years ago. As one of only 12 humans working on the station, Sarah often felt like an artifact herself. The other researchers were polite enough, but she could see it in their eyes. The gentle condescension, the patient smiles that said they were humoring the primitive newcomers. She didn't mind the work, though. Cataloging artifacts was actually fascinating. Each piece told a story about how different species had developed, how they had solved problems, how they had communicated with each other. Sarah had always been good at seeing patterns, at understanding how things connected to each other. Her small office was tucked away in the lower levels of the station, far from the important laboratories where the real science happened. She had one small window that looked out into space, and a desk covered with carefully organized artifacts. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Sarah was examining a strange metal disc from the Proxima system when she heard voices in the corridor outside. She recognized Dr. Vexhi's crystalline tones, though the translator made everything sound a bit mechanical. 3 months of work, and we're no closer to understanding it, Dr. Vexhi was saying to someone. Nexus 7 has tried everything. The pattern is driving us crazy. What kind of pattern? Asked another voice. Dr. Melwis, Sarah thought. Short and long pulses. Very simple, very repetitive, but somehow completely impossible to understand. It's like the sender is using a form of communication that we've never encountered before. Sarah found herself leaning closer to the door, curious despite herself. She had heard rumors about a mysterious signal from the Veil Nebula, but no one had shared any details with the human researchers. They were considered too junior, too primitive to contribute to such an important project. Maybe we need to think outside our normal frameworks, Dr. Melwis suggested. What if the pattern isn't based on mathematics or language at all? We've tried everything, Dr. Vexhi replied, sounding frustrated. Art, music, chemistry, physics. Nothing works. It's as if the sender is using a completely alien form of logic. The voices moved away down the corridor, but Sarah's mind was racing. A pattern of short and long pulses that no one could understand. Something about that description tickled at the back of her memory, like a word on the tip of her tongue that she couldn't quite recall. She tried to focus on her work, but the conversation kept coming back to her. During her lunch break, she found herself thinking about communication methods throughout history. Her background was in archaeology, but she had always been interested in how different cultures had found ways to send messages across long distances. The ancient Greeks had used fire signals. The Chinese had developed complex systems of drums and flags. Native American tribes had used smoke signals. Each method was adapted to the technology and materials available at the time, but what stuck in her mind was something much more recent: the communication systems that had developed on Earth during the Industrial Age. Telegraph lines that carried messages as electrical pulses, radio signals that could travel across oceans, and the codes that had been developed to turn letters and words into patterns that machines could send and receive. That afternoon, Sarah couldn't concentrate on her artifacts. The conversation in the hallway had awakened something in her mind, a connection that she couldn't quite make but that felt important. Finally, she gave up on work and decided to take a walk around the station. The research areas were bustling with activity. She could see teams of scientists huddled around displays, their various alien forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Everyone seemed frustrated, speaking in the rapid tones that the translator interpreted as stress or confusion. Sarah found herself standing outside the main laboratory where Dr. Vexhi's team worked. Through the open door, she could see the massive display screen showing the mysterious pattern. Short, 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 long, 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 short, 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 over and over, never changing. Her heart started beating faster. There was something familiar about that pattern, something that made her hands shake slightly as she stared at the screen. She had seen this before, or something very much like it. "Excuse me," she said quietly from the doorway. The room full of scientists turned to look at her. She could feel their surprise at seeing a human in their workspace, and their polite but clear expectation that she would apologize and leave. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Sarah continued, trying to keep her voice steady. "I heard about your signal problem. I was wondering if I could take a look at the data." Dr. Thexnol's forearms moved in what the translator interpreted as amusement. "That's very kind of you to offer, Dr. Chen, but this problem has stumped Nexus 7 for 3 months. We've had the galaxy's best minds working on it." "I understand," Sarah said. "I'm not saying I can solve it. I'm just curious. Sometimes a fresh perspective can help, even if it's not an expert perspective." Dr. Vexhi studied her with those strange crystalline eyes. Sarah had learned that the Kethvari could process information much faster than humans, and she felt like she was being analyzed in ways she couldn't even understand. "Very well," Dr. Vexhi said finally. "But please understand that this is not a simple puzzle. We are dealing with a form of communication that may be completely alien to everything we know." "I understand," Sarah repeated. "Could I get a copy of the signal data to look at in my office? I promise I won't get in anyone's way." Dr. Melwis's tentacles waved in what seemed like sympathy. "Of course, Dr. Chen. Nexus 7, please prepare a basic data package for our human colleague." The artificial intelligence's voice filled the room. Data package prepared, transferring to Dr. Chen's personal terminal. Sarah thanked them and started to leave, but Dr. Vexhi called after her. "Dr. Chen, if you do notice anything at all, please let us know immediately. This signal could be very important." "I will," Sarah promised. As she walked back to her office, Sarah's mind was spinning. The pattern on the screen had looked so familiar, but she couldn't place it. Short, 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 long, 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 short, short, short. Where had she seen something like that before? She settled at her desk and opened the data file on her computer. The pattern filled her screen, and suddenly her hands were trembling. Not from nervousness this time, but from excitement, because she knew exactly what she was looking at. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had been trying to decode an alien message for 3 months. But Sarah Chen, a primitive human archaeologist, was looking at something that any child on Earth would have recognized. She was looking at one of humanity's oldest and most basic communication systems. She was looking at something that had been used to save lives for over 200 years. She was looking at Morse code. Sarah stared at her computer screen, her heart pounding so hard she was sure the entire station could hear it. The pattern of short and long pulses looked back at her, as familiar as her own name. She had learned Morse code in college as part of a communications history course, and later studied it more deeply for her research on early industrial civilizations. ... Even someone who had never studied Morse code might recognize that pattern. It was SOS, the universal distress signal that Earth had used for over 2 centuries. But this couldn't be right. The signal was coming from the Veil Nebula, thousands of light years from Earth. How could humans be out there? Sarah's hand shook as she opened a new file on her computer and began transcribing the signal. Dot for short pulse, dash for long pulse. The pattern she had seen on the main screen was just the beginning. The full message was much longer, SOS, MAROONED. Oh my God, she whispered, forgetting that her office's translation system would broadcast that in several alien languages to anyone nearby. She kept transcribing, her excitement growing with each letter. The message was clear, desperate, and heartbreakingly human. SOS, marooned. Ship designation Terra Nova. Crew of 43. Need rescue. Repeating. Sarah sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. The Terra Nova. She remembered that name from the news feeds 3 years ago. It had been Earth's first deep space exploration mission, sent to map the outer territories of human space. The ship had been declared lost with all hands when it failed to return or make contact, but they weren't lost. They were alive somewhere in the Veil Nebula, calling for help using one of humanity's oldest communication methods. And the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had been staring at their distress call for 3 months without understanding what it meant. Sarah stood up and started pacing around her small office. This was incredible, but it was also terrifying. How long had the Terra Nova crew been sending this signal? How long had they been waiting for rescue, while the Galactic Consortium's best minds treated their cry for help like an unsolvable puzzle? She had to tell someone immediately. But who? And how could she explain that she had solved in minutes what Nexus 7 couldn't figure out in 3 months? Sarah grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, then stopped. She should double-check her translation first. What if she was wrong? What if her excitement had made her see patterns that weren't really there? She sat back down and went through the signal again, more carefully this time. Each dot and dash corresponded perfectly to the Morse code alphabet that had been standardized on Earth in the 1850s. The message was clear and consistent, repeating every 4.7 hours exactly as the scientists had observed. There was no doubt about it. The Terra Nova was out there and its crew was alive. Sarah gathered her courage and headed for the main laboratory. The scientists were still gathered around their displays, looking frustrated and tired. Dr. Vexhai was standing by the large screen, her crystalline form reflecting the light of the mysterious pattern. Dr. Vexhai, Sarah called from the doorway. I think I know what the signal means. The room fell silent. Every scientist turned to look at her, their alien faces showing expressions that the translator interpreted as surprise and skepticism. You do? Dr. Vexhai asked, her voice carefully neutral. Sarah walked into the room feeling very small among all these advanced beings. Yes, it's not an alien language at all. It's human. It's a very old Earth communication system called Morse code. Dr. Thexnall's forearms moved in what seemed like polite disbelief. Dr. Chen, Nexus 7 has analyzed this signal against every known communication system in the galaxy. That includes all human languages and codes. Maybe not all of them, Sarah said quietly. Morse code is very old. It was developed in the 1830s for early telegraph systems. Most humans don't even know it anymore. She moved to the control panel and asked Nexus 7 to display the signal again. See this pattern? ... That spells SOS, a distress signal we've used for over 200 years. The room was completely silent now. Sarah could feel their attention like a physical weight as she continued her explanation. The full message says SOS, marooned ship designation Terra Nova, crew of 43 need rescue. Repeating. The Terra Nova was an Earth exploration ship that was declared lost 3 years ago. Dr. Vexhai moved closer to the screen, studying the pattern with new eyes. You're saying that humans have been stranded in the Veil Nebula for 3 years, calling for help, and we've been treating their distress signal like an unsolvable puzzle? Yes, Sarah said simply. Dr. Melwis's tentacles were moving rapidly, a sign of agitation Sarah had learned. But that's impossible. Nexus 7 should have recognized any human communication system. Nexus 7, Dr. Vexhai called. Analyze the signal using the human system called Morse code. The AI's response came immediately. Analyzing. Pattern recognized. Message decoded. SOS marooned ship designation Terra Nova, crew of 43 need rescue. Repeating. I apologize for my oversight. Morse code was classified in my databases as an obsolete communication method and was not included in active analysis protocols. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah watched as the galaxy's greatest minds struggled to process what had just happened. Their most advanced computer had overlooked the solution because it had been programmed to ignore primitive technology. Dr. Kexavor's 6 eyes all focused on Sarah. You solved this in minutes. We've been working on it for 3 months. I had an advantage, Sarah said. I'm human. I know our history, including the parts that might seem obsolete to more advanced civilizations. Dr. Vexhai was already moving toward the communication console. We need to organize a rescue mission immediately. Those people have been waiting for 3 years. Wait, Dr. Thexanol called out. How do we know this human is correct? What if she's making a mistake? Sarah felt a flash of anger, but she kept her voice calm. Nexus 7 just confirmed my translation, and I can prove it's the Terra Nova. Check your databases for the ship's crew manifest. I guarantee you'll find 43 people on that list. Dr. Vexhai was already pulling up the information. Terra Nova launched from Earth Starbase 3 years ago. Crew complement, 43 individuals, including Captain Maria Santos. She turned to look at Sarah with something that might have been respect. Dr. Chen, you may have just saved 43 lives. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief and exhaustion. We need to hurry. They've been alone out there for 3 years. We don't know what condition they're in. The laboratory erupted into activity as scientists began preparing for a rescue mission. Dr. Vexahai took charge, organizing teams and equipment while Sarah watched from the side. She had done her part, but now it was up to others to bring the Terra Nova crew home. As she watched the controlled chaos around her, Sarah couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. The galaxy's most sophisticated minds had been stumped by a communication system that was already old when her great-great-grandparents were born. Sometimes, she realized, the most advanced solution wasn't the best solution. Sometimes the simplest answer was the right one, and sometimes being primitive was exactly what the situation called for. The main laboratory buzzed with activity as word spread throughout the research station. Scientists from dozens of different species gathered to witness what many were calling the most embarrassing moment in Galactic Consortium history. The galaxy's most advanced computer had been outsmarted by a human, using knowledge that was over 200 years old. Dr. Vexhai stood before the assembled crowd, her crystalline form catching the light as she addressed the room. Sarah sat quietly in the back, still somewhat shocked by what had just happened. She could feel the stares of the other researchers, some curious, some respectful, and some clearly embarrassed. The signal has been decoded, Dr. Vexhai announced. Dr. Chen has identified it as an Earth communication system called Morse code. The message is a distress call from the human vessel Terra Nova, which has been missing for 3 years. Murmurs filled the room as the information was translated into dozens of different languages. Sarah watched alien faces display emotions that looked familiar even across species barriers: surprise, embarrassment, and wonder. Dr. Kethlon, the station commander, moved forward. His tall, thin frame towered over most of the other scientists as he studied the decoded message on the main screen. Are we certain of this translation? He asked. Nexus 7 has confirmed it, Dr. Vexhai replied. The pattern matches the human Morse code system perfectly. The message identifies the ship as Terra Nova with a crew of 43 people. Dr. Thexnol raised one of his 4 hands. How is it possible that our most advanced systems miss something so simple? Nexus 7's calm voice filled the room. I was programmed to focus on advanced communication methods used by spacefaring civilizations. Morse code was classified as obsolete technology and excluded from active analysis. I failed to consider that stranded humans might resort to primitive backup systems. The word primitive hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah felt several eyes turn toward her, and she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The same technology they were calling primitive had just solved a problem that had stumped their advanced civilization for months. Dr. Melwis spoke up. Her tentacles moving in what Sarah had learned indicated embarrassment. This raises important questions about our analytical methods. We may have been so focused on complex solutions that we overlooked simple ones. It's worse than that, said Dr. Rindal, his furry face showing what looked like shame. We've been treating their cry for help like an intellectual puzzle while real people suffer and die. The room fell silent as the full weight of the situation hit them. Somewhere in the dangerous Veil Nebula, 43 humans had been sending desperate messages for help, while the galaxy's greatest minds analyzed their signal as if it were an abstract mathematical problem. Sarah finally stood up, feeling the need to speak. The important thing now is getting to them quickly. The Terra Nova crew has been stranded for 3 years. We don't know what condition they're in. Dr. Kethlon nodded gravely. You're absolutely right, Dr. Chen. Dr. Vexhai, how quickly can we mount a rescue mission? The fastest ship we have available is the research vessel Harmony, Dr. Vexhai replied. It can reach the Veil Nebula in 18 hours. But the nebula is dangerous. High radiation, electromagnetic interference, unstable matter. We'll need specialized equipment. Whatever you need, Dr. Kethlon said. This is now our highest priority. Dr. Yulseth raised a concern. What if we can't locate them precisely? The Veil Nebula is enormous and the signal only tells us the general region. Sarah cleared her throat nervously. I'd like to volunteer to join the rescue mission. If the Terra Nova crew is using Morse code, they might try to communicate with us the same way. I can translate in real time. Several scientists turned to stare at her in surprise. Dr. Kexvor's 6 eyes all focused on her at once. Dr. Chen, this will be a dangerous mission. The Veil Nebula is no place for... He paused, clearly trying to find a diplomatic way to say primitive humans. For archaeologists. Sarah finished for him, a slight smile on her face. Maybe not, but it's apparently no place for advanced computers either. Right now, I'm the only person on this station who can communicate with those people. Dr. Vexhai considered this for a moment. She has a point. If we need to coordinate with the Terra Nova crew, Dr. Chen would be invaluable. It's settled then, Dr. Kethlon declared. Dr. Chen will accompany the rescue mission as communication specialist. Dr. Vexhai, you'll lead the team. Take whatever equipment and personnel you need. As the meeting broke up and teams began forming, Sarah found herself surrounded by scientists who suddenly wanted to talk to her. The same beings who had politely ignored her for months were now asking detailed questions about human communication, methods, and Earth history. Dr. Thexnell approached her with what seemed like genuine curiosity. Dr. Chen, how many of these obsolete human systems might still be relevant? Should we be studying your primitive technologies more carefully? Sarah thought about that for a moment. We humans have a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sometimes the old ways work because they're simple and reliable. When everything else fails, basic tools often still function. Dr. Melwis joined the conversation, her tentacles moving in what Sarah now recognized as thoughtfulness. This suggests we may have developed blind spots in our pursuit of advancement. We've been so focused on complex solutions that we've forgotten the value of simple ones. It's not just about simple versus complex, Sarah explained. It's about understanding that different situations call for different tools. A primitive radio transmitter might not be as sophisticated as a quantum communicator, but it also won't fail when exotic particles interfere with quantum states. Dr. Vexhai appeared at Sarah's shoulder. We need to move quickly. The Harmony is being prepared and I want to launch within 6 hours. Dr. Chen, are you ready for this? Sarah nodded, though her stomach was churning with nervous excitement. I've never been on a rescue mission before, but I'm ready to help however I can. Good. Pack light and meet us at Docking Bay 7 in 4 hours. We'll brief you on the way. As Sarah headed back to her quarters to pack, she couldn't help but think about the strange turn her life had taken. This morning, she had been a forgotten human archaeologist studying ancient artifacts. Tonight, she would be part of a rescue mission to save her own species using knowledge that the rest of the galaxy considered obsolete. She paused at her office door and looked back at the artifacts on her desk. Each one represented a civilization that had found ways to solve problems with the tools available to them. The Kethvari with their crystal technology, the Melwis with their biological computers, the humans with their mechanical ingenuity. Maybe that was the real lesson here. Every species, every civilization, every individual had something unique to contribute. The trick was knowing when to use advanced solutions and when to fall back on the basics that had worked for generations. Sarah gathered her few belongings and headed for the docking bay. 43 humans were waiting in the dark void of space, and she was going to help bring them home. The research vessel Harmony cut through the swirling gases of the Veil Nebula like a silver needle through colored silk. Sarah pressed her face to the observation window, watching in awe as clouds of purple and gold drifted past the ship. Beautiful as it was, she knew the nebula was incredibly dangerous. The radiation levels would kill an unprotected human in minutes. Signal strength is increasing, reported Dr. Vexhai from the command console. We're getting close. Sarah sat at a specially configured communication station, headphones over her ears as she listened to the steady pulse of the Terra Nova's distress signal. The Morse code was clear and strong now, the same desperate message repeating over and over. SOS, marooned, ship designation Terra Nova, crew of 43 need rescue. Repeating. There, called out Lieutenant Colmar, the ship's navigator. Sensors detect a metallic object at bearing 27 Mark IV. The main screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a damaged spacecraft floating in a field of debris. Sarah's heart clenched as she saw the Terra Nova for the first time. The ship's hull was scarred and blackened, with obvious signs of severe damage. Several sections were completely dark, and she could see that one of the engine pods was missing entirely. How are they still alive in that? Whispered Dr. Melwis, her tentacles curling with what looked like distress. Humans are tougher than they look, Sarah said quietly, though she was wondering the same thing herself. Dr. Vexhai activated the communication system. Terra Nova, this is the research vessel Harmony. Do you copy? Static filled the bridge. Sarah leaned forward, listening carefully to the background noise. There, she could hear something beneath the interference. Wait, she said, holding up her hand. They're responding, but not on voice channels. Listen. She switched the signal to the speakers so everyone could hear. Beneath the static was a new pattern of dots and dashes, different from the automated distress signal. Sarah grabbed a tablet and began transcribing quickly. THANK, GODWE, SEEYOU. Dr. Vexhai stared at her in amazement. They're talking to us in Morse code? Their communication systems must be damaged, Sarah explained, still writing as the signal continued. They can probably see us on their sensors, but they can't use normal radio. They're falling back to basic electrical pulses. The message continued. FORTY, TIWO, CURVIVORS, ONE, KIA, NED, IMAM EDIIT, EVAC. 42 survivors, Sarah translated, her voice catching slightly. 1 killed in action. They need immediate evacuation. Sarah quickly typed a response on her keyboard, sending it as Morse code pulses to the Terra Nova. HARMONY, TO, TERRA, NOVA, WE, ORE, HERE, TO, RESCUE, IOU. The response came back almost immediately. CAPTAIN, SANTOS, SPEAKING, BLESS, YOU, hello. Sarah had to wipe tears from her eyes as she translated. Captain Santos speaking. Bless you all. Dr. Vexhai turned to the rescue team. Prepare for emergency evacuation. I want boarding parties ready in 10 minutes. As the crew sprang into action, Sarah continued communicating with the Terra Nova. Captain Santos explained through painstaking Morse code that they had suffered a catastrophic engine failure while exploring an uncharted system in the Veil Nebula. Most of their advanced systems had been destroyed, leaving them stranded with only basic life support and emergency power. For 3 years, they had survived on rationed supplies and sheer determination. When their main communications array failed, they had rigged a simple transmitter that could only send basic electrical pulses. Captain Santos, an amateur radio enthusiast who knew Morse code, had set up the automated distress signal and maintained it for over 1,000 days. They never gave up, Sarah told Dr. Vexhai as the boarding teams prepared to launch. They kept broadcasting that signal even when they had no idea if anyone was listening. And we almost didn't hear them, Dr. Vexhai replied, her crystalline features reflecting what looked like shame. If you hadn't been here, Sarah shook her head. Someone would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. But how many would have died while we were trying? The boarding operation took 3 hours. The Terra Nova's airlocks had to be manually operated, and several sections of the ship were too damaged to enter safely. One by one, the survivors were brought aboard the Harmony, thin, exhausted humans who looked like they had been through hell, but were very much alive. Captain Maria Santos was among the last to be evacuated. She was a small, tough-looking woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. When she stepped onto the Harmony's bridge, She looked around at the assembled alien rescue team with wonder. "Captain Santos," Dr. Vexhai said formally. "Welcome aboard the Harmony. I am Dr. Vexhai of the Galactic Research Consortium." Captain Santos nodded respectfully, then turned to Sarah. "You're human," she said simply. "Dr. Sarah Chen," Sarah replied. "I was the one who decoded your signal." Captain Santos stared at her for a long moment, then smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen since the rescue began. "You heard our Morse code?" "Eventually," Sarah said. "It took the galaxy's best minds 3 months to figure out you were calling for help." 3 months? Captain Santos looked confused. "How is that possible?" Dr. Vexhai stepped forward, looking embarrassed. "We overlooked the possibility that you might be using primitive communication methods. Our analysis systems were focused on advanced technologies." Captain Santos looked around the bridge at the assembled alien scientists, then back at Sarah. "So the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were stumped by a communication system from the 1830s? "That's about the size of it," Sarah confirmed. Captain Santos threw back her head and laughed, a sound of pure joy and relief that needed no translation. "My grandmother taught me Morse code when I was 12 years old. She learned it from her grandfather, who was a telegraph operator. Old knowledge, passed down through generations, just saved all our lives." Dr. Thexnol, who had joined the rescue mission, spoke up with obvious curiosity. "Captain Santos, how did you survive for 3 years with such limited resources?" "The same way humans have always survived," Captain Santos replied. "We improvised, we adapted, we made do with what we had. When the fusion reactor failed, we rigged solar collectors. When the food synthesizers broke down, we grew vegetables in the hydroponics bay. When the quantum communicator died, we built a simple radio transmitter." She looked around the bridge again, taking in the advanced technology that surrounded them. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. They're simple, reliable, and they work when everything else fails." 3 days later, the Harmony docked at the research station. The Terra Nova survivors were taken to medical facilities for treatment, but their 3-year ordeal had ended. Word of the rescue spread throughout the Galactic Consortium, along with the embarrassing story of how the galaxy's most advanced computer had been defeated by 19th century human technology. Sarah found herself in an unexpected position. No longer the primitive human archaeologist working in the basement, she was now the director of alternative communication protocols, a new department created, specifically to study obsolete technologies that might still have value in emergencies. Dr. Vexhai visited her new office a week after the rescue. "How are you settling in?" she asked. Sarah gestured to her desk, which was now covered with communication devices from dozens of different worlds and time periods. "It's fascinating work. Did you know the Kolvari used to communicate with light patterns that could travel through space dust? Or that the ancient Melwis had a chemical language that could survive in vacuum?" "No," Dr. Vexhai admitted. "We've been so focused on our current technologies that we've forgotten our own history." "That's what I'm here for now," Sarah said. "To make sure we remember that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution." Dr. Vexhai paused at the door. "Dr. Chen? Thank you for reminding us that every species, every civilization has something valuable to contribute, even the ones we think of as primitive." Sarah smiled. "Especially the ones you think of as primitive." After Dr. Vexhai left, Sarah returned to her work. Nexus 7 was being reprogrammed to include thousands of obsolete communication methods in its analysis protocols. New protocols were being developed to ensure that distress calls would never again go unheard, regardless of how simple or primitive they might seem. The Terra Nova incident had become a case study taught throughout the galaxy, a reminder that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the pursuit of advancement should never mean forgetting the wisdom of the past. Sarah looked out her window at the stars and thought about Captain Santos and her crew, now recovering in medical facilities but alive and safe. 42 people had been saved because a young human archaeologist knew something that the galaxy's greatest minds had forgotten. Sometimes being primitive was exactly what the universe needed.